Hello, this is Stephen again, and welcome back to our data flow for Apache NiFi on our aviation data that we've been working with in the last couple of videos. All right, so in this one, I told you last time in our last video that we would cover how to take some data that we have coming in and make it available inside of Elasticsearch. So let's go ahead and get started on that, shall we? Now, for this, we are going to need a jolt. And you know what? We can just copy the jolt we have over here. But we're going to make some changes to this one. And this one is not going to use a split. So we're going to try to keep all of our data together. It comes back in results of 100 from the API, from Aviation stack. So API. And I want to try to minimize splitting the flow file into smaller flow files unless I need to do that. Some of it could be you may get performance gains out of it. It's hard to tell sometimes until you give it a shot and see what happens. But normally having many thousands, hundreds of thousands of individual flow files when you can maybe, especially like if you have a flow that you're working with and you start off early splitting that data set that you bring in and you split it into a whole bunch of little flow files right away. And then later on down the line, when you're about ready to put it, take that data you've transformed or wrenched or whatever, and put it into your endpoint, like your MySQL server, SQL server, or a NoSQL server or something, wherever you're trying to get it to that endpoint, or maybe you're trying to write it as a flat file and compress that as flat file so you have an archive flat file or whatever, right? You're normally doing a merge when you get near the end, sometime around then, right? But if at all possible, you don't need to do it, then we should probably try to avoid it because it may not be needed. Now, sometimes you do want to take really large data sets and break them up, but a lot of times there's tools available to help us do that and not have to break it into one individual flow file per row. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to take the results that we get from the invoke HTTP to the API, take that response, add it over here. In this case, we are also going to bring our control rate relationship for a success over here too. And that is so that we don't have to keep pulling from the API to test out our flow. Because sometimes you got to go through a lot of flow files before you get a flow built out, especially when you're building it the first time you're testing things out. Now, I know when we do this jolt, I'm wanting to take the data from there and add a little bit and enrich the flow file or enrich the whole entire data set itself a little bit. So in order to do that, I'm going to use a query record. Now, I don't need to do it this way. I can actually, what we're going to add, we could do all of it inside the jolt. But I'm here to try to give you more examples and some stuff to help you think about. If you see one processor used a different way, maybe it'll help you make a decision on how you could do something in your flows. So don't know, I can tell you this, the way we're building this right now, you could definitely accomplish all this inside of the jolt for these two steps right here that we're going to do. But we're not going to do it that way. We're going to use the query record because it's helpful too. Okay, so we'll take the success from the jolt, put it down here. And let's go ahead, and I like to keep things nice and compact. There we go. And unfortunately, when I get this far, we're putting it into Elasticsearch. We're going to use a processor called put Elasticsearch HTTP, and that's how we're going to do it for this video. And unfortunately, and it may work, but I've never gotten it to work for me. So there may be a method that I don't know about that might be better for putting into Elasticsearch. But the way I've been doing it is, and like I said, these videos are there to show you some things I've learned and how I've done some things. I've improved on some methods and stuff like that too. But sometimes, hey, I don't know it all. So I'm learning every day too. I learn a lot about Elasticsearch or NiFi every single day that sometimes I didn't know last week. All right, so from here, we are going to use a split JSON because I've never been able to get the next processor to work without splitting up the JSON first and providing individual flow files to do it. which is funny because we're going to split this into individual ones, and the processor is going to batch them back up when it sends them into Elasticsearch. All right, so we can't create the relationship yet because we don't have the query built, but we'll just keep that right there. And then the next one we're going to be using is put Elasticsearch HTTP. This one right here. There's a couple different ones available there. And there we go. All right, so that's going there. We have those set so we can start building out this flow because we have a general idea and rough idea here now on how we're going to work with it. Another thing we need to do is check on our, so I stood up a Elasticsearch in Docker. So here we go. I have Kibana running as well in Docker so that we can visually see it and look at it this way. You can completely do all this without Kibana if you want to just interact with Elasticsearch using HTTP requests in the API itself. You can definitely do that. But sometimes it's nice to see things. So let's go ahead and go to our management and stack management. From here, we have index management because in Elasticsearch, they are index keys. And we have none created. So this is a fresh node we have here. Now, and it's a single node setup right now. So yeah, that's how it is. All right, so we don't have anything here, so we're ready to go. But we have Elasticsearch up and running. So the first thing we need to do is jolt. So we do, let's send a little bit over here. There we go, we got 10 fresh ones. List it, and let's look at our data again. So we can keep it, make sure we understand what it looks like. View it. Okay, so we have a couple things over here. We have this little beginning area with the total counts and some information on it, the offset we're starting with, the limit and all that good stuff. And then we start at, it goes from root and it goes down the data, and then it goes down to all of our individual flights. Now, the way we were handling it before is, in order to deal with that, we over here took it into a split JSON right away for the response, put them into single individual ones. We broke it down all the way to the data and then at the individual flights, so we got individual ones, right? And then we built our JSON or our spec for our jolt around that information here. And we're going to change this up a little bit in order to be able to handle dealing with all these records in one go. And as one flow file, we have to do it differently. So we'll go in here into the jolt. Let's go ahead and go to properties, or first of all, let's go ahead and grab a sample of this data. That way we can see what our new spec is going to do for us. Go into jolt, advance, and then here's our, because we copied this one over, right? So we have that. We go ahead and paste this. We can clean it up. And then there we go. So there we have all of the entire response, all 100 requests back. Nothing's been cleaned up. It's not individual rows. Now, this is the same spec we used before to work with these at individual level, right? I mean, it should have worked, shouldn't it? Let's go ahead and hit that transform button. And we get a nasty little null for our output. So it's not what we're looking for after all. So we have to make some changes to our spec. And that's what we're going to work on next. Now, I'm always learning something new about Jolt and how to use it. There's a lot to be learned, a lot for me to learn here, but when I figure it out, it's always nice to share it because sometimes it takes a while to figure out how to do some of these specs, at least for the first time I'm doing it. So what we're going to do is change it. We're going to go from here and we're going to put in a new spec. So I already have the spec done. I don't want to waste all of our time on it. So let me copy that. And just keep in mind what you see here. You can always jump backwards in the video, jump forwards if you need to compare a little bit. But we're going to select all of that. And as you can see right here, we go shift, spec, straight into flight date, departures, and all that, right? That's not what we're going to have now. Okay, we have something completely different now, or a little bit different, right? From here, we go with our operator, our spec, and then we jump down to data. And then we're going to a star to grab everything. And we have some other stuff over here. So these are the changes that we need to make in order to let it know that, hey, when we get to data, we're working inside of an array now to get, and we need to pull out the results from this array. We need to work and iterate through all of them. But I don't just want you to give me, I don't want my output to just be like flight date. I mean, I have a new array of all of the dates, but it's now separated from the other data for that flight. That's not what we want. And believe me, it took me a little bit to figure out how to get past that. So this, though, will let us keep all of our flights together, but have all their individual data points grouped together as well. So let's go ahead and test this one out. Transform, and there we go. That is what I'm looking for. Believe me, I was thrilled when I got this one figured out. But here we go. So we are trimming down the same. We're trimming our data again. So we're not bringing everything over from the original input to the output. But what we do have is the flight date. We kept that, kept status. We still don't need those two, but I kept them. And then we have our departures. We're still renaming columns. So what this is doing right here is it's doing a little, I don't want to get too deep into it because we'll waste too much time here. But it's going from flight date and it's telling, hey, go up one level, go back up one level to grab that result. Departure here, see we're going up 2 to get from here back up. So there's some good documentation out, or it took me a while to find some good examples and documentation on how to get this one accomplished, but there you go. And now we have all 100 individual results. So we can go ahead and save this. And that one will work, right? Well, kind of. So it does get us the results we're looking for. We are happy with that. Now let's go ahead and schedule this. We don't need 100 of these at once. It's just 2 seconds. And then let's go ahead and push them down into the query. Start, refresh, stop. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's set up our query now, right? And in our query, the jolt I just did, I don't want to put all that data into Elasticsearch. And I actually want to enrich the data slightly too. So let's go in here. And so if you'll notice again, we've talked about this a long time ago, but you needed to set up a record reader and a record writer. And this is what makes the query record pretty powerful, right? So what this gives us the ability to do is basically take in any structure, any format of that data coming into us, whether it's JSON, XML, plain text, CSV format, Avro. You can take all that in and read it into here. And then now the processor knows how to read that data and interpret it. It can work with it. And then you can either send it back out the same way you took it in, or you can send it out in a complete different format. So we could take this in as JSON, and we could spit it out as a CSV file or a CSV format if we wanted to. Because maybe from there, we're going to write it into a file next. So you can completely do that. One thing I want to do is include zero record flow files. Yeah, I don't want those. It just creates a mess. And we'll leave cache schema true. And now we need to set up our readers. So let's go ahead and do that. Reader, we are going to create a new reader because I don't want to touch that one right now. And we know the data coming in that we need to read is in a JSON format. Now we have 2 options here. We have the JSON path reader and we have the JSON tree reader. We should be able to use the tree reader or path reader. No, tree. We're going to use the tree reader. So there we go, JSON tree reader. I'm going to give it a little name so I can keep track of it. So AD for Aviation Data Flow. Let's just call it AD. AD, there we go. Put that on the end there, or on the front. And now we also need a writer. So let's go ahead and build one of those at the same time. We'll do create. And give it a name too, so we can distinguish it between the other ones. We'll create that one too. Apply. Now let's go back in there and go set those 2 up because they're disabled by default, right? Okay, so here we are in our controller services, all the ones we've set up so far inside of this. And let's go to our records, that's the Avro one. Oh, here they are. Here's our 2 right here. So we want the tree reader. We'll set that one up first. Oh wait, that is not by tree reader. This is by tree reader. And I built an Avro for it on accident. So let's do this guy real quick. Here's our reader. I didn't want to start it. I wanted to go to properties. Okay, so right now we have it set to infer schema, and it should be able to infer the schema, right? I don't know why not. It's just JSON. It should be able to read the path in the tree format of the JSON, so that should just work. And in some cases, you can definitely do this. And I don't see why we can't right now, right? So let's go ahead and apply that. So that means we can turn that one on. Enable. Okay, that one's turned on and running. I accidentally built the wrong one. We don't want Avro. Let's go ahead and add a JSON record set writer. Figure this guy. AD. There we go. Properties. Okay. So we wanted to inherit the record schema from where it comes from. I don't see why not. I mean, that should work, right? So let's go ahead and do that. And, you know, I don't see anything. Right now, I don't see a reason why we need to change anything else. Let's go ahead and apply. Turn this on and let's see what we're able to do now. Okay, so that's working. Now we just need to, oh, because we deleted that one. Okay, now the only things we need to do is set up our relationships, right? So one thing we're going to be doing is terminating both of these because we're not going to need them because we will be creating a query. And I'm just going to call, I'm not doing any filtering, I'm not doing multiple queries, so let's just call this one query. We're just going to have one in here. And inside this query, we are only going to grab a couple pieces of information. So let's go ahead and expand this a little bit so we can all see it. I'm going to copy over my query that I've already made up, and let's take a look at what we're doing here. So we're selecting on the Flowfile, and the very first thing we're doing is we're adding a timestamp or we're going to create our own timestamp, and we're going to do that from the expression language for NiFi's expression language, right? So if we go back to Apache expression language here, we can see in the guide that we want to scroll down to date, manipulation, and I think now's what we're looking for, right? We want to know at this moment. That's our time. That's what we're going to use for our timestamp. When this guy gets processed, give me the date. Now, we could go with just now, but that would be not the format we want. So what we want to do is when we send it into Elasticsearch, I find it really easy just to give it UTC and work with that. And give it in a Unix timestamp or Unix format. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to use now, convert it to number, which over here tells you the number of milliseconds since midnight, GMT, Jan 1, 1970. There's our example of what it looks like, and that's what we're looking for. So that's what we have over here, and that's what's going to give us our timestamp. And then we are bringing over depart airport, arrival airport, airline, flight number, altitude, speed, horizontal. And there's one more, but we'll go back to that one later. So that's what we're going for right here. Now, if you recall, sometimes all of these things aren't there. And we'll see some examples of that. So let's go ahead and say that. That's good. Now we can connect the query to it. There we go. We apparently have everything set up correctly because it's not complaining anymore. Okay, so that one's set up. Let's go ahead and run it. So we already brought it over from the Jolt. We're taking it to the next one. Let's go ahead and look at our results there in the Jolt. And we see when we format this, we have some data in here. Not everything has data, some null values in there. Something pretty interesting in here. We were going to use altitude in our query, but we don't see it in here. So we might want to keep track of that. We need to find an example of one that actually does have it. And it might take us a while if there is even one in this data set. This pool may not have any. Let's see if I can scroll through here and catch one real quick. And you know what I just thought of? I just wasted that. Could just do Control F in here. We can definitely search through this data to see if it's in there. Okay, no, it's not. So it's not in this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it through our processor and see what happens. Well, we got an error right away. And parsing statement. So it's complaining about our parsing. Something's not happy with it. So we need to figure out what's going on with this one. So this video is already at our time limit for the video. So when we come back next time, we'll go ahead and continue forward and solve some of the issues we have to see what's going on and how we can get around them and move on to getting to the end and getting this data into Elasticsearch. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're liking the videos. That you can go ahead and utilize the notifications to be made aware when the next video comes out. And that way you're supporting me as well, because it lets me know whether or not the time and investment I put into these is worth it for you and is really helping. So catch you next time.